Before I clock off for the summer, I wanted to share with you my reflections on a book that I've recently finished that got me thinking about the theme of vocation, particularly my vocation, I suppose, as a parish priest. The book in question is a novel by a French existentialist, Albert Camus, called La Peste, or The Plague. And with a title like that, you can well imagine why I've only really felt up to reading it in the last couple of weeks. Now, the novel is set in Oran, a city in what was then French Algeria, set as it is in the 1940s. And superficially at least, it's about the city's response to the various stages of an epidemic as it sweeps through the region with devastating force. But more fundamentally, you could say that the book is actually about the range of human responses to any kind of unseen and insidious evil. And it's worth pointing out that the book was first published in 1947, just after the Second World War. And here's where we touch on the theme of vocation. You see, one of the characters we meet in the book is a Catholic priest called Father Panalu. And in the course of the book, he preaches 2 sermons from the city's great cathedral. And the first sermon takes place just as the news of the epidemic is made public. And Father Panalu announces with supreme confidence and even greater arrogance that the plague is clearly a punishment from God for the city's collective wickedness. And he calls on the people to repent. And as you read the book, you sense that the priest is not just delivering these words with a sense of conviction, but with a kind of morbid sense of satisfaction as well. It's a real holier-than-thou moment. But Camus develops this character over the course of the next few chapters. And Father Panalu gets involved with the care for the sick and the dying, and he is shaped by these experiences, this encounter with the raw edge of people's grief. And after a particularly harrowing incident, he makes his second address from the pulpit at the cathedral. He makes his second sermon. And this time the priest is somewhat more humble, certainly more ready to accept that he doesn't have all the answers. But then the secular existentialist in Camus has his character go a step too far. Because Father Panalu can't explain why a good God would allow such terrible suffering, rather than continue to wrestle with these questions, instead he simply resigns himself to them and says, we must not simply just accept these things, but more than that, we must actively want them to happen as well, because they must, somewhere along the line, be sent from God. So if God is good, then somehow these terrible things must ultimately be good too. And the term that Camus uses in the book for this peculiar position is this philosophical phrase, active fatalism. And unsurprisingly, it was at this point where I wanted to push back and say that actually there's a naivety here. And if then that's too harsh, then at least an unfamiliarity with the priestly vocation. As far as I understand it, being a clergyman doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination you have to have satisfactory answers to the many deep and challenging questions about life and faith. But certainly that doesn't mean I have to accept what I cannot explain as somehow being a mysterious sign of God's love. Absolutely not. Rather, so much of the Christian life is a deliberate resistance or defiance to these terrible things. So the role of the priest is in fact to help people articulate and direct their frustrations and their questions to God. And I try and help people do that with even greater clarity and force. After all, if God is all good and all powerful, he can certainly handle my questions, frustrations, and my doubts when I direct them to him in prayer from time to time. So this then is the intercessory nature of Christian vocation. This is about helping people to address their questions and not suppress them. This is about encouraging people to explore that religious impulse, that gut instinct that we all feel to turn to God, or rather, to turn on God in the heat of our anger. This, after all, is what we read time and again in the Bible, especially in the Psalms, where prayer upon prayer, the voices we hear, the narrator addresses many difficult and dark questions to God. How long, O Lord? Why do you remain silent, O God? Why do you hide your face from me? So I think my thought about vocation is this. Spiritual leadership in time of crisis, it's not about closing down difficult questions, as if God needed our protection or our legal defence. Spiritual leadership in time of crisis calls us to rediscover what it means to intercede on behalf of others, to help others to formulate and express all that they feel, and direct it to the one for whom no topic is off limits. This is about teaching people not to simply accept their circumstances, but rather to pray in such a way that draws on the full ferocity of their hurt and anger, and to include rather than exclude these things from the spiritual life.